Get ready, everyone. Today we're unlocking the full potential of Erwin DM with the powerful Workgroup Edition. We'll show you how this tool can boost collaboration, give you better control, and make modeling easier than ever. From streamlining your workflows to staying ahead of changing tech, this session is packed with game-changing features. Plus, with expert insights from Andy McGovern, you won't want to miss it. Andy, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Jessica, and welcome back, everybody, for session 4 of Erwin Skills 101. I'm really happy to have you back today. We're going to be building on all the sessions that we've had so far, so let's just kind of get an idea as to where we left our heroes. But before we do that, just to kind of giving you a better understanding of where Erwin DM fits in here, we're going to be talking about developing your systems, and the Erwin Workgroup Edition is part of that. The Mart Portal is the component that we use in order to provide access control, establish how end users are going to be interacting, and also how we're going to be publishing information out to the ER360 web portal. We're not going to get too deep into the specific functionality around the workgroup today. I will be touching on some of the features that are in there with versioning. We're going to cover this in more detail in the next session. Today, we're really going to be focusing on how to take the models that we've already built and use those as a development platform. So if you remember, the whole goal or messaging that I'm working on here is to discover what you have, document what you have, and then use that as a baseline for development as you move forward. So today we're going to actually jump right in and talk about how we generate DDL from a physical model. And then we're going to show you how to generate the DDL correctly using impact analysis. We're going to look into how automatic versioning works in the workgroup. But again, we're not going to go into the detailed mechanics of that. And then we're going to talk about how we can centralize active model templates to enforce the standards. So we've discovered what we have, we've built a data dictionary, and now we're going to start developing. So here's the big slide that I always throw up. This is just for reference for everybody. This is what Erwin Data Modeler does. There's a lot of information that's on here. There's a lot of functionality. And if you'd like more detail about how this works, well, you know how to get in touch with me. All right, one more picture here, just again to give you an idea as to what we cover. And now we're back to the future here. So where we left off. All right, so so far we have built a logical physical data model by reverse engineering a SQL database, and now we have the ability to create a data dictionary. We have some custom information in here. We've broken the physical and logical diagrams out, and we added annotations to that. In the last session, I provided the annotations so that you can build these at home and follow along. We have an annotation for the physical, and then we also have an annotation for the logical. In this model, we also have a name standard mapping, which provides for the translation from the business term into the abbreviated logical. In the exercise that we've done previously, what we did is we used that to translate from the abbreviated SQLish back into the business term. So we found a table called cust, and then commensurately we created an entity called customer. We also added a user-defined property at all of our column levels. There's a critical data element. This is the simplest one that we put in there. It could really be anything that your organization needs from a custom label standpoint. And then finally, we also flagged all of the information in our customer table and some other tables as sensitive data. This information is going to be viewable in the data dictionary. It's also going to have a sensitive data indicator flag when you look at the model in the Workgroup Edition and as it's published out to ER360. We also created a subject area, and a subject area is a way that we can take a larger model and group related objects together. This is a subject area based on all of the tables that are directly related to the order item table. And then finally, we created a data dictionary that you can export to either a CSV file, HTML, or PDF in the report designer. So everything that we've seen so far has been related to the standard edition, and we're going to continue down that path. And then as we go through today's session, you'll see how we expand and move into the Workgroup Edition with versioning. All right, so now we're going to take a quick look at how do you generate the DDL from these models. We're going to circle back and look at how to make this with impact analysis, etc. But for the model that we have just created, we can actually generate the DDL for that. Basically, what we're going to be doing is we could rebuild this database in a different system. So in order to see the DDL for this model, you need to be on the physical side of the model, and you're going to see that in the middle center there, you have the physical view, and then on the left-hand side, as you're looking at the Model Explorer, you're going to see a lot more objects than you would if it was logical. This will bring up the schema generation wizard, and we're not going to go through all of the steps here, but we're just going to zoom right to the preview area, and then you'll be able to see the DDL. So this is the DDL for this system. The DDL comes out of the model via the schema generator. So just as a quick reminder to everybody, with Erwin, we don't have PDMs or LDMs, physical data models, logical data models. We have Erwin models, and then from there we'll generate the DDL. All right. Okay, now we're going to get into developing a physical model. At this point, I would like to say, yes, we are recording this, and it will be available to you. In addition to that, some of the screens that you're going to be seeing, the objects may be a little bit blurry. That's because I'm going to be focusing on the mechanics of how to work with the data modeler as opposed to the actual information that's in the details in the columns and things like that. So just keep that in mind as we continue down the path here. All right, so now we're back to our model and we're on the physical side of the model itself. In order to make this happen nicely, we're going to do a little bit of an exercise. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to save this model locally, and then we're going to create a copy of it to compare it against. One thing that you'll notice when you're working with the data models, we've saved this, or we've named the model as Skills 101 Model 1, right? The actual diagram and information here doesn't pick that up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to give this name to match the saved name so that we don't lose track of where we are. So right click on new model. We're going to give it a name, Skills Model 101, and then we're going to save it locally as type erwin DM. And then we're going to take that same model and we're going to name it Model 2, and we're going to save it locally as Model 2. So now we have our two models that are identical, and we're going to make changes to one, and then we're going to compare it to the other. When I do this with customers, I will reverse engineer a system, build a model, and compare it back to the database. In this case, we're doing pretty much the same thing. We're just going to be comparing two models. And this is Complete Compare. Complete Compare can be used in lots of different places in the data modeler. This is the most common use case for impact analysis. Now, as we're going to look at this, here's some basic mechanics. Zooming out, right? If things aren't showing up the way you expect them to go, you zoom out. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a change to the employee table. The easiest way to get there is to go to the Model Explorer on the left, find the employee table, go to diagram. It's going to highlight it in the model, and it's actually in the center of my screen, and you can't see the letters there. But then we're going to zoom in. Okay, so that's the employee table. And we're going to right click on that and do column properties. And we're going to do some pretty standard DBA stuff. We're going to delete a column, we're going to add a column, and we're going to modify a column. So we're going to delete the middle initial column. So you select that and hit the garbage can to delete that. We're going to select the employee last name. And in the physical data type, we're going to change that from varchar 40 to varchar 45. And then finally, we're going to add a column called Skills 101, taking the default data type. So an addition, a deletion, and a modification in our model. Now, when we close this down, we're going to take a look at how those actions just generated an alter script. So I mentioned that before. We're going to take a look at it. So I added, deleted a column. If I look at the alter script, I go into alter script preview, and now we're going to be able to see the actions there. I'm deleting the middle initial and changing last name, and I'm adding the skills there. Now, if you're sharp-eyed, you'll see that there actually may be an issue here. We're going to actually see that when we do the complete compare. All right, so now instead of just generating the DDL, which sometimes you may actually need to do and keep track of it, because as we're working with the Workgroup Edition, any little change is going to create a new version. So you have an audit history, even if you're just changing one column on a, in a fire drill. But from a production standpoint, the best thing to do is obviously do an impact analysis of the changes that you made in your model against the production database or the system that you're going to be making those changes. So in that case, what we're going to do is under actions, we're going to go to complete compare, and we're going to select model 1 as our left model. That's going to be our main model. And then model 2 is going to be our right model. This is our comparator. So we're comparing model 2 to model 1. And we're going to make that comparison at the database level. Then you hit compare, and you're going to get the screen, the resolve differences screen. And what this is showing is the differences between the two models. The hashes indicate a missing object. So we know that we added the middle initial, or we know that we added skills 101 to model 1, and we could see that in the center column here. We know that we deleted middle initial from model 1. It still exists in model 2. The last name column is showing up as an unequal value. That's everything that we're seeing, the differences between here. And then finally, you'll also see that that middle initial was part of an index. So that was the issue that I saw before, and now we can actually document this. So I'm not going to delete the middle initial because it is part of an index, and I don't want to make anything broken until I get with the team. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually resolve the differences here. One of the things that makes a data modeler unique is these arrows, as you see them towards the right, allow you to move one structure from a model to another. So I'm going to bring the middle initial index structure back into my model, which is my standard model, and then I'm going to move my, I'm going to add the skills 101, and I'm going to make the change for the employee last name. Before I do that, because I love my job, I'm going to generate a report. And then I can save this off. You can do it as a document or an Excel. That's HTML. And now we're going to proceed. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring the middle initial back into the fold. When I hit finish and close, middle initial will be back in the employee table. And then I'm going to bring that index back. It will actually recreate it, but I'll bring that back. And now we're going to move Skills 101 into Model 2. And we're going to move employee last name into Model 2. So now we can actually see the alter script for those changes. So just like before, we're going to jump right to preview. And now here is the correct alter script. We're not touching the middle initial index. And at this point, if you can generate it, if you have the rights to push it out to the database itself, or you can save it off as a DDL or a SQL file. So there's impact analysis using complete compare in the data modeler. Other places that you can use complete compare is, let's say that right model was a blank model and you just wanted to start adding objects in there. That's another way that you can do it. If we do design layer architecture, we can use complete compare to show parent and child relationships between models. All right, we're back to the model. Middle initial is where it belongs in the employee table. Then we just drag it up, so now it's in the right place also. So there we go. That's complete compare impact analysis with an alter script. Okay, now we're going to talk about active model templates. Now I've been mentioning these and I've been talking at the periphery of these for the entire session. So now we're really going to get into it. And I don't know if this is actually the official way, but since this is being recorded, we're going to call this the unofficial Andy way. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to make this a template. We're going to add one more diagram in here. Okay, so you're going to add a new diagram called logical. And then we're going to change the view in this diagram to entity. What this is going to do is it's just going to show the entities. It's going to ask you if you'd really want to do this, and then you just say yes. Okay, and then there's the entities. They're in a big old blob. And if this is not your first time here, you know what to do, right? We're going to push it out to hierarchical, and then we zoom out to be able to see the full diagram. And now what we have is a model that we can use as a template, right? So we have the user-defined properties already in here. We've got the 3 diagrams. We have them annotated. So I'm just going to take this and use it as my template. So in this case, what I'm doing is going to select all of the entities here. You may have to go over on the physical side and clear out some views. And then I just delete them. I also want to delete them from the model. So now I have a blank model. And I'm going to save it as an Erwin template. Now I can use this to apply to models, and they will have 3 diagrams, and it will have that user-defined property associated with it. Pretty cool stuff, and we're actually going to use that in just a moment. All right, now let's talk about the Workgroup Edition. So everything that we've seen up to this point has been revolving around the Standard Edition. The Workgroup Edition doesn't take anything away from the Standard Edition. It's just a enterprise strength version of Standard. Standard Edition works alone. It's single-threaded. Workgroup Edition has a repository where you can do automatic versioning and integrates with Active Directory. It also has the ability to publish models out to end users in read-only format using ER360. There's a number of different profiles and roles that are used in here. There's admin, architect, modeler, and viewer. But as I mentioned earlier, we're going to go into more detail with the Workgroup Edition, how all of this is set up in another session. Today, we're going to focus on how we use the Workgroup Edition to provide for versioning. So here is a quick view of the architecture. What we've been talking about so far is revolved around the Erwin client, Tier 1. The Workgroup Edition uses the Erwin Mart repository on the back end in order to store these models and version them. And then we can also publish out to ER360 in read-only format. And as I mentioned before, everything will integrate with Active Directory, Entra ID, single sign-on, that sort of stuff. All right. So when you're working in the Mart, instead of just opening up a model, your first thing you're going to do is you're going to connect to the Mart. And your configuration may be different, but here's where I'm going in. And I'm actually connecting to the Mart with server authentication, which you won't be able to do. Everybody, if you're in a production environment, you're going to be authenticating using Windows. All right, so I've authenticated to the Mart here, and I didn't point this out, but if you rewind a little bit, you'll see that the icons on the upper left-hand side were gray, and then I authenticated, and now they're black. That means I can use them. If you look down at the lower end of the screen here, it says Andy McGovern. That's me. And that means that I'm logged into the system, and the model that I'm currently looking at is a non-Mart model. So all that information is sitting right there for me. Now, the model that we have in place here, this is that model 2. We're going to bring this and we're going to move it into the Mart. So if you notice at the top of the screen, it says Erwin DM Skills 101 Model 2.Erwin :physical splat. We're going to take this and we're going to move it into the Mart. So I built a catalog or a library in my Mart. Again, this isn't something we're going to be covering today, but I have a library there. I'm going to save my model as Skills 101 Model 2. I'm going to designate that I'm going to maintain multiple versions here, and then I save it. Now, if you notice up at the top, the path has changed. Now you can see the path into that particular library in the Mart. And if you look at the lower portion there, it says Online Mart Model. That means that this model has is integrated with the repository. We're going to do the same thing with the template. So we're going to open up that template. We're going to save as. In this case, we're going to mark it as a template. Save it as Skills 101 AMT, Active Model Template. Save it. And now it goes into the repository. Okay. If you look at the top, we're working on version 1. We're going to add a user-defined property to this template. So now we're developing these objects. So we want to make sure that you're on the physical side of the model, and then you go to user-defined properties. We're going to select column, new, and then we're going to create this user-defined property. Is going to be PII, personally identifiable information. It's also going to be a list with the values of no and yes. The default value is designated by a tilde, so in this case, the default value is no, followed by yes. So now that becomes part of the template. And we'll see that as we apply it to a model. So we made that change, and then we hit save. We added a PII user-defined property. Hit save, and goes into the repository, and now it's version 2. You'll notice up at the top there. And then I changed the model name. I didn't like the way that was, so I changed it to Active Model Template, AMT. Now it's version 3. So pretty straightforward. Once you have a model in the Mart, all you have to do is hit save, and it will automatically go into the Mart and create the new version. Always best practice to put a comment in there so that somebody can come along and say, what the heck was Andy thinking? All right. So now we're going to take a look at what that model looks like as it's been saved in the Mart. So I have everything closed down here, and I'm going right back into that library. And if you look at the open version towards the middle of your screen there, it automatically defaults to the current version. There may be multiple versions there. You can open them up, but it automatically defaults to the latest version. So now we have this open. We can zoom in. Again, this is to get an idea as to what we're looking at here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add an entity to this diagram. All right, so now this is kind of hard to record. So what the mechanics here are, you click on entity up in the upper left-hand corner there, and then you're going to click in the model diagram, and that will allow you to create an entity. And I call that entity skills 101. That's all I did. I didn't add it to anything. And now I'm going to save this. It's going to become version 2. And then I put in my notes, added skills 101 entity. And now that's in the repository as version 2. So now let's take a look at how to compare these versions. We know we made changes in here. They're in the repository. We're going to take a look at those differences. So in the catalog manager, I open up those models. I expand them out, and then I select version 1 and version 3. Or actually, I'm just looking through these here. Select version 2 and version 1, and I compare them. This may look familiar, right? And then we hit compare, and then this will show that I added skills 101 to the version 2 there. And then I have a report to show that. All right, active model templates. We've been talking about them. We built one. Now let's use one. All right, so we're going to go back to skills 101 model, model 2. We're going to, up in the left-hand corner, click on model templates, bind template. This is the process of associating the model with the template. You bind it. If you choose to do synchronize on model load, every time this model opens up again, it will go back and check with that template, incorporate changes. You can create filters because you can have a template that has all sorts of different things and you don't want to change the model name or certain things. You can actually have filters to be specific as to how these templates are applied. So we're going to select the template. My template is in the repository, so I'm going to bring in a Mart template. I select it. I'm going to run the template wizard to select the object for synchronization so this way we can see what's happening. First thing here is the meta model objects. These are the user-defined properties that we added. That is going to modify the actual meta model. All right, so here's the user-defined properties, and then in the model, we made a number of changes. We actually anything that's a change in here could be incorporated into the template. Now, there is one thing that we're going to do, as we don't want this model name to be changed. So we're going to slide down to model, and then you've got the name there. And if you look on the right-hand side, it says synchronize. We're going to change that to defer. And what that does is when I hit finish here, it's going to do everything. It's not going to update the model name, but the next time I do it, it will be set to synchronize. If I set it to ignore, it will never synchronize until I set it back to restore. All right, and then I apply the template, and we've got 3 different diagrams here. Everything is laid out in that, original blob layout. So I'm not going to go through all the steps here. It's hierarchical, and then you can zoom out. If you look at any of the objects or tables that are in here, the columns that are in here, they all have this personally identifiable information. And now that we've applied this, we applied the template, it goes into the repository, and now it's version 3. So we're building on each one of these and developing the models. At any given point, you can go back and open up an older version and use that. If you're going to do that, just make sure that you save it into a different model name so that you don't have all kinds of revisions in one model. It will drive you nuts. All right, now here's the last piece that we're going to be talking about today, changing the target database. As you've seen, as these sessions start, I bring up the big slide, and it's got all kinds of databases that are set in there. That is what those 33 databases are what we support natively. What I'm going to show you now is one of the ways we can actually change the target database, or the DDL, that's going to be generated from the model in the data modeler. So this model has been built, we reverse engineered SQL Server instance. We're going to change the target database to Azure. Now, when you're doing this from a model that's in the Mart, it's not going to like it. It's just basically says, if you do this, you're going to have all kinds of problems. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to make the change, but then we're going to save it as a different model. Okay, so we made the change, the target is Azure, and we save it into the repository as that Azure model. Now, as we have that in here, we see that version 1 is in the repository. It's an online Mart model. And if we go onto the physical side and we look at actions and schema, here's the DDL to instantiate these structures in Azure. We can do this with any of the supported data structures that we have. We can go from SQL to Databricks, from Teradata to Snowflake. All of those are possible within the data modeler, in the basic data modeler itself. All right, so that's going to end our session today. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully this has given you some more knowledge as to how to be more effective, the erwin data modeler. Join us for session 5, where we're going to take the development and collaboration component to the next level. I want to thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Jessica, for a great session. I always enjoy doing these, and I feel like they keep getting better and better. So back to you and the team. Thanks, everybody.